Hi, I'm Stacy Shelby, and I'd like to thank Pacifica for having me here today to record this. I am a graduate from the Pacifica program. My degree was the MA PhD combined in depth psychology. My specialization was Jungian and archetypal studies. I was the first cohort through, and I defended in 2014. My research was on individuation and the wild woman archetype and women's psychological development at midlife in relationship to the wild woman archetype. So I had on my dissertation committee Christine Downing, who was my chair and a wonderful mentor to midwife this work through for me. And I completed my dissertation, defended, and then I needed to just leave the work. And I left it for a couple of years, and that was a nice sort of break. And after a couple of years, it started bugging me that it was feeling incomplete. And so I thought, well, I'll maybe just do a little edit and then I'll self-publish. That felt like a decent enough conclusion. So I did a little edit, and then another little edit, and then another little edit, and it became a major revision. And then my friend in Australia, she encouraged me to send it to at least 6 publishers before I decided to self-publish. So I thought, okay, I can do that. So I didn't. I sent it to one. I sent it to Chiron Publications. And I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Leonard Cruz there as my editor. And through several more revisions, working with their team, we came out with the book, Tracking the Wild Woman Archetype. And the subtitle is A Guide to Becoming a Whole Indivisible Woman. And you can see in the feather, there's a beautiful face emerging from it. So they have a wonderful graphic team to work with me to create this book. So what began as my doctoral research, then through many rewrites, a lot more work, became this book, which was a really huge accomplishment, and I'm very grateful to the team of support that I had available to work on that. So what the book became about, the central premise was about this process of individuation, Jungian notion of individuation, and the psychological development phase that happens for both men and women. But because I'm a woman and I was the poster child at 35 going through the midlife crisis, I really focused on what that process was like for women. And I leaned into the alchemy as a process of transformation, and how we take our base metal, our suffering, our pain, our things that we're ashamed of, and we transform those into our gold. So how we use those to identify our new way of being and becoming in the world. So I like the word indivisible, the way Jung used it. Individuation for him, in one of his many definitions, because it's a hard concept to define, meant to become a whole, indivisible, no longer dividable person. So paradoxes became reconciled, usually through some other symbol. So opposites, conflicting perspectives, become contained within the strength of a whole, conscious, aware person. The ultimate conclusion being that we become conscious of the unconscious. We become conscious of the unconscious archetypes and forces that are acting on us. And that's where the wild woman comes in. She's one of those archetypal presences, and even harder to define than individuation, I think. So where I went with the archetype of the wild woman, so initially she was brought out of shadow by Clarissa Pinkola Estes in her 1992 work, Women Who Run with the Wolves, which was a bestseller. And I had the pleasure of working with her last year, which was lovely. And the wild woman archetype is a woman who, if we can imagine who is a woman before socialization and cultural influences. So who would we be innately without all the shaping, pruning, trimming, molding, right? And so trying to connect to that much more instinctual sphere of our individual innate nature, which also belongs to a woman's individual soul. So my exploration was very much about how do we become ourselves, our most authentic expression of ourselves, through the grist of struggle and suffering, in particular struggle and suffering that comes from relationships and how we experience our sexuality as authentic women, as opposed to how we're taught to experience it. So those are some of the bigger concepts I tried to work on. My method of research was alchemical hermeneutics, which is a research methodology that Dr. Robert Romanishin developed. He's from Pacifica. And I resisted doing that methodology really hard because I knew that it would work on me. It was alchemical and that the author would be transformed in the process. And I was just really not up for that. And yet I couldn't not. It was definitely the path I had to go. So through my research, I use a lot of dreams, personal dreams, dreams of other women, anecdotes, synchronicities. And these are all validated in the field of depth psychology as imaginal ways of knowing. And because it's psychology in service to soul, and dreams and synchronicity all come from the realm of soul, individual soul, the anima mundi, the methodology itself supports the soulful engagement, which is directly related to the wild woman. The wild woman is probably an expression of the soul. Although I feel like, and I explored this in the book, there's something a little bit different, that it's more about being embodied,